Please welcome the 82nd President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Columbus, Ohio Mayor Andrew Ginther.
Good afternoon. It's going to be a great afternoon here at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I want to take a minute and thank all of the sponsors of our 93rd winter meeting. To the American Beverage Association, Americans for the Arts, American Institute of Architects, Comcast Communications, GoFundMe, Google, Grubhub, HDR, Ike Smart City, the International Association of Firefighter, Salesforce, Seed, Starbucks Coffee Company, Target, Vila, Walton Family Foundation, Waymo, Wells Fargo, and lastly, our title sponsor, Instacart. Thank you for all of your generous support. We couldn't do this without you. I am so pleased to introduce the Mayor of the District of Columbia, who welcomes the United States Conference of Mayors to her incredible city year after year. She has served the District of Columbia in elected office for almost 20 years and has served as mayor since 2015. She is the second mayor in D.C. history to be elected to 3 terms and the first African-American woman in America to be elected to 3 4-year terms as mayor. She does an incredible job chairing our International Affairs Committee and serves as a member of our advisory board. She is also graciously hosting our Saturday night event at the Spanish Ambassador's Residence, which we are so looking forward to. Please join me in giving a warm welcome and thank you to DC's Mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Well, good afternoon, mayors and all of our supporters here. It's my privilege to welcome you to Washington, D.C. And as you've heard Mayor Ginther said, I've had the privilege of being mayor of my hometown for 10 years now. And it has been a great honor to work with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Tom Cochran and our leadership to host this winter meeting. I know that we're going to hear from President Biden, and I want to congratulate him in advance on a job well done. From the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law to the Inflation Reduction Act, our cities will be benefiting from those policies and investments for years and years to come. And for most of us, we are policy wonks. We look forward to gathering every year to learn new things, to feel energized. So whether you are a first-time attendee, a new mayor, or a seasoned participant, this week is for you. This week is where we come together to share strategies and big ideas and learn from one another. Unlike most people in the political structure, our job is on the front line. We fill potholes, we make sure communities are safe, and we make it easier to do business. And we're all responsible for making sure that our cities come back from the pandemic. I am proud of the progress that DC is making, and we look forward to sharing with you our investments in affordable housing, what we're doing to invest in professional sports in our city for our hockey team, our basketball team, and of course, our football team that we want to bring home. So we're also proud that we're bringing back tourism, driving down crime, and continuing to make our parks the best park system in the world. So we are optimistic, not only about the future of our city, but the future of yours. And we know how important the U.S. Conference of Mayors is to our leadership. So again, I hope that we see you at the Welcome to Washington, D.C. reception at the Spanish Ambassador's Home, co-hosted by Ambassador Angelis Moreno. Everyone, have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. The next discussion will focus on innovative strategies and partnerships to expand food access and improve nutrition security in underserved communities. Please welcome the panel and the Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs for Instacart and our moderator in this session, Casey Aiden Wansberry. And she will introduce the panel as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Casey Aiden Wansberry, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at Instacart. We're honored to be the title sponsor of this year's U.S. Conference of Mayors winter meeting, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you this afternoon and with Mayor Dickens of Atlanta and Mayor Cognetti of Scranton. I want to start by saying that our hearts are with everyone impacted by the wildfires in California. Like many organizations, Instacart has been thinking about what we can do to help, and we've been working to get supplies and essentials to those in need. If you're interested in learning more about our work, or if you'd like to donate groceries to those in need in California, please visit instacart.com/donate. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Instacart, we're the leading grocery technology platform in North America. We work with about 1,500 retailers to reach 98% of all U.S. households, including 95% of those in food deserts. So every day, millions of Americans rely on Instacart to get the groceries they need from the local retailers that they trust. Our mission is to help give everyone access to the food they love and more time to enjoy it together. And that's why 2 years ago, we introduced a new initiative, Instacart Health, that uses our technology and our reach to help expand nutrition security, make healthy eating easier, and scale the power of food as medicine. Since then, we've partnered with universities, nonprofits, health providers, and elected officials, including many mayors, to help reimagine what's possible when it comes to nutrition access and nutrition programs. So that's why I'm very excited to be here today to moderating this panel with two leading anti-hunger advocates, Mayor Andre Dickens of Atlanta and Mayor Paige Cognetti of Scranton. And we're going to talk a little bit about their approaches to alleviating nutrition insecurity in their cities. Mayor Dickens, we appreciate your proactive leadership in addressing food insecurity and your innovative projects like the Grocery Store Initiative, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And you're also such an important voice in the Conference of Mayors, so thank you for being here today with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Mayor Cognetti, I can think of no one better to be taking over the role as Vice Chair of the Mayors Alliance to End Childhood Hunger. Instacart's the inaugural co-sponsor of the Mayors Alliance, and we've been proudly supporting this program for the past 3 years, and we know the Alliance is going to benefit from your incredible leadership, so thank you. I'd like to start by asking each of you to talk a little bit about how food insecurity impacts your cities specifically. Mayor Cognetti, I'll start with you.
So I, like some of you in this room, started my public service on the school board, and we always know that there's hunger issues, but it is not until you sit on a dais at a school district and look at the raw numbers that you really start to see what that looks like, and then you go into the schools and realize that these are the meals that those children are having that day. They might not go home with food. You have teachers that are putting food in their backpacks on their own dime to make sure that they have dinner. So it's really important to us in Scranton that 1 in 5 families that face food insecurity, we're closing that gap. So this just really could not be a more important initiative in Scranton and in so many other cities.
Thank you. And Mayor Dickens, if you'd like to talk about Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, this is a critical issue to the city of Atlanta as well. 14% of the residents of the city of Atlanta are facing food insecurities, and that's about the average across the nation, 14%. And so that means that children are going hungry and people don't have as much access to fresh, affordable groceries. They have to take long commutes to be able to get to where they can acquire food. And this is happening. These food deserts are existing in parts of our city that are often in minority communities, the lower income communities. And so I'm trying to make Atlanta a city of opportunity for all. And that won't happen if some of the residents don't have access to fresh, affordable food options in their communities. And so with these food deserts, access becomes an even greater issue for families who lack transportation options, experience mobility challenges, or caretakers with dependents at home that can't easily get to and from the grocery store. So just last month, we announced a new partnership with the City of Atlanta and our economic development arm, where I serve as the chairman. It's called Invest Atlanta, and a grocery store called Savvy Provisions. So Savvy will open 2 new grocery stores, giving fresh food options to residents living in 2 of our low food access neighborhoods, one on the south side of town and one downtown. And so this municipal grocery store strategy is a significant step towards addressing food deserts in our city and ensuring that all residents can have healthy, affordable food options and bring people closer to some stability.
Thank you. Another theme of our panel that I wanted to address is public-private partnerships, and you touched on this with the program that you just mentioned. When we think about how to approach working with government at Instacart, we think about what unique attributes we can bring to the table. It's our technology and our reach, and then we think about how we can pair that with the deep expertise and the community engagement that mayors and city officials have and know about what works best in their communities. So a couple of examples of some of the work that we've been able to do so far. In Columbia, South Carolina, we've partnered with Mayor Daniel Rickenman to power his Grocery Access Program, which is designed to improve grocery access among Columbia's food deserts. And in that partnership, the city provided 100 Columbia families living in food deserts with complimentary Instacart Plus memberships and a monthly Instacart stipend. And we've seen really encouraging results so far, the impact that that's been able to make in that community. And then at the federal level, we've been working pretty closely with the USDA to be the first grocery delivery platform to bring SNAP online, and we're now in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And we just launched a SNAP eligibility screener on the platform to help people quickly and anonymously determine whether they might be eligible for SNAP benefits. So we're hopeful that that's helpful to all of your communities. So turning back to public-private partnerships, Mayor Dickens, if you can talk a little bit more about how you've leveraged that kind of partnership in this area in your city.
Yeah, it's important to have public-private partnerships to get this work done. I'm thankful to be at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where I serve as the P3 Task Force Chairman. The programs that we have really help to ensure that all Atlantans live within a half mile from the nearest fresh food options, and that's bringing new retailers to Atlanta and building new grocery stores, or helping existing mom-and-pop stores have better amenities and better profiles. And so I love this program because not only does it benefit families, but it also drives more business into these communities, and local retailers can expand and have new life into these unused public spaces. Sometimes these are vacant spaces or vacant grocery stores, or something that we can turn into now that's tax revenue generating for the city. And these types of programs can contribute to making Atlanta more vibrant in some of these neighborhoods that have been disinvested. One size doesn't fit all, so you have to look for various different solutions. That's where the public-private partnerships come in handy to be able to address hunger and nutrition security. And so our programs that focus on new stores in neighborhoods that have historically faced barriers, but also working with the Independent Grocers Association to train up these mom and pop stores so that they do an even better job and have collective buying power. And so I believe that we need to deploy every tool possible at our disposal to end nutrition insecurity, and using public-private partnerships as a way to do that has been helpful to us, using Savvy Provisions as a store that comes in, and we support them financially with tax incentives and other things. So that's, and even space that we may have in a municipal owned building to put a grocery store in there.
It's incredible. I think another aspect to us that's really exciting about public-private partnerships is how you can sort of take a chance on innovations and gauge impact, and think about trying a bunch of things, seeing what works. And over the past few years, one partnership we're particularly proud of where we've been able to do that is we've been working with the Partnership for Healthier America, the nonprofit, to support 1,100 families in 4 cities, Denver, Inglewood, New Jersey, Milwaukee, and Washington, D.C. They've got a program we've been supporting that offers families in under-resourced communities $60 a month to use on produce specifically, using a category-specific stipend on Instacart, and then they also get an Instacart Plus membership. So what's been interesting is that they've been doing this in these cities for some time, and we've been able to get some interesting results, including a recent survey showed 60% of survey respondents said that they reported that they ate more fruits and vegetables once starting the program. 87% said that this stipend helped them build a healthy habit of eating that they hadn't had before. 86% said that it empowered them, giving them the dignity to choose the different items that fit their unique needs best, and they appreciated that flexibility and that choice. So it's still new, but it's really encouraging to us to sort of see which part of this is really resonating. In that vein, I know Mayor Cognetti, you've been looking at what works and what's most impactful in your city. We'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're thinking about that.
Yeah. It's fitting that we have our White House staff here and the president is coming because the White House Hunger Challenge launched just a couple years ago was an incredible spark for us in Scranton. We started our hunger task force in Scranton as a result of that White House Hunger Challenge. And you all know in this room that there's a little pixie dust that happens when you say White House once you get home. It really helped us bring everyone to the table, not just our hunger partners and nonprofits, but our faith community, some of our partners at our different grocery stores, and also our philanthropy. So our task force has really had success. We are at a point where we are now funding together a navigator position so that we can close the gaps between the food providers and then better meet those needs. So you say, the choice, right? The dignity of choice in food. So many people say, I like to come to this food pantry, but I can't choose a culturally appropriate meal for my family, or I don't have the type of produce that I like, or my kid doesn't like this. There's so many different layers to solving the hunger crisis in a way that meets the needs of our communities. The Hunger Task Force in Scranton has been a great thing for us, not just solving hunger, but helping us build relationships that are helping us address many of the other issues in our community. So we thank the President and the White House for kicking us off. We thank Instacart for your partnership. Don't forget Instacart creates jobs as well. I know a lot of people who are working for Instacart. And also I'm Vice Chair of the Mayor's Alliance to End Childhood Hunger. And if there's a mayor in here that isn't a part of it, please come see me or Mayor Dickens, and we'll make sure to get you there.
Thank you, Mayor. We've just got a couple minutes left, but since you are both members of the Mayor's Alliance to End Childhood Hunger, I did want to ask you a little bit both about how you're thinking about policy advocacy and what you'd like to see and what you might want the other mayors to support you on.
Sure.
Paige?
Sure. Yeah, so as Vice Chair coming in, and Mayor Maddie Parker of Fort Worth is the chair coming in this year, we're really focusing on 3 items for advocacy. One is SNAP in the Farm Bill. Everyone in this room knows how the data works, that if kids have food, they're going to have better education outcomes, our economy is going to be better, there are better healthcare outcomes, lower healthcare costs for families. The second would be summer EBT. There are some states that do not participate in summer EBT. We need to lobby Congress to help diffuse the cost to states of those summer programs, continue to meet the gaps during not just summer, but holidays, even long weekends. So we've got to continue to make sure that feeding kids isn't just 320 days a year, it needs to be 365. And finally, a pitch for the Metro Economies Committee, working on the tax bill as we go into this year. The child tax credit needs to be permanent. We know how it was during the rescue plan. We know that that helped lift children out of poverty. We've got to continue to push for the child tax credit.
Yeah, and all 3 of those, as Paige mentioned, I'm going to double click on the first one of those, which is while Congress is focusing on the Farm Bill, the Mayor's Alliance is focusing on SNAP, and lifelines like SNAP, and not letting it get watered down. Right? We want to make sure that it's more accessible and that there won't be unrealistic eligibility stipulations, et cetera. So we don't want funding cuts. We don't want these things to be watered down. We really should be making these types of programs more inclusive and more accessible. So we're going to be pushing for that because the need right now is so vast. So that one is near and dear to me because so many residents need those SNAP benefits, and they complain complained to me about the reduction in their benefits, you know, and that leads to challenges in other places that we have to, you know, kind of provide stopgaps to city government. So I love the federal government to be able to keep those benefits at the level they need to be.
Mayor Dickens, Mayor Cognetti, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you all for listening, and we really look forward to working on food insecurity with you all going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great panel. So appreciate Mayor Dickens and Mayor Cognetti's leadership and Instacart's engagement with this critically important work. As mayors, we have a clear understanding of the scale and impact of the housing needs in our communities. As we work toward a response to our national housing crisis, I thought it would be important to gain perspective on the scale and complexity of the issue at a national level. Our next speaker serves as the managing director of the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, which conducts rigorous research to advance policy and practice and brings together diverse stakeholders to spark new ideas for addressing housing challenges. In his decades of experience studying the U.S. housing market, he has focused on the financial, social, and demographic aspects of home ownership, the dynamics of the rental market, housing affordability, and racial and socioeconomic segregation. You're in for some great information and powerful, powerful data to help inform our approach. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Chris Herbert.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. It's wonderful to be here. When I got here and I saw the sign out front saying housing is the issue, I couldn't have been more pleased. But I know speaking to this group, that's not news. The housing crisis has been growing for a long time. It's front and center for mayors, so I'm really appreciative of being here with you today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow I want to make 5 points and leave those with you. Now, I know many of these will be issues that you already know well, but I hope from what I present to you today, I'll give you a few new insights to help you think about the solutions that we need. So we'll talk about renter and home buyer affordability, existing homeowners and their financial challenges, long-term drivers of affordability and implications for what we should do today, take a bit of a look at the housing shortage we face, and then close with a demographic outlook. So talking about renter affordability, I mean, the first headline is if you look at the trend in the share of renters who are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing, this chart is showing you both the number and the share over time. We had a crisis that was growing in the aughts, and then for the last decade kind of held steady, but since the pandemic has now started to climb again pretty steeply. So we're now at half of renters who are cost burdened, 23 million renters, and so the crisis has really reached kind of epic proportions. But if that was the only part of the story, it wouldn't necessarily be new. But what's been new is if we look at this by income level, so here I'm showing you by $15,000 increments, which is what one makes working year-round full-time at the federal minimum wage. So we have people making 1, 2, 3, 4 or more times the minimum wage. What you can see is that for the lowest income workers, this problem is not new. That group, the share who are cost burdened and the share who are severely burdened, paying more than half their income on housing, has not changed much since 2001. What has changed is people who are working year-round full-time at decent jobs have seen the share of those households who are paying more than 30% of their income on housing rising sharply, particularly those making $30,000 to $45,000 a year. And that group has seen things worsen, in particular over the last few years. So what I like to say is that what we have done is we've democratized the housing affordability challenge. This is no longer just a problem of the poor, it's a problem of people who are working year-round full-time. The good news for those who care about housing is that it's brought it front and center, but the bad news is we can't forget that those people making less than $15,000 a year are the group that are also experiencing the problem in a really fundamental way. So we'll come back to that. One thing I also want to point out is as we think about this pattern, it does differ a bit across the country. So in this chart, we're looking at the top 100 markets, dividing them into three groups: the quarter that have the highest rents, the 50 that are in the middle of that distribution, and the 25 at the bottom. And here the point is, if you look at the ones making less than $15,000 or even less than $30,000, it doesn't matter if you live in Detroit or you live in San Francisco. You're going to be severely cost burdened at those income levels. But as you move up in the rent distribution, so the LAs, the Boston, the San Franciscos, the Washingtons, that is where it really becomes an issue of the folks who are making more higher incomes. So the nature of the housing challenge does differ by market, but you can also see is that green bar, the middle group, has seen a significant increase in that affordability challenge at middle incomes as well. So rental crisis is getting bigger and it's spreading to more groups. And so that means we have to have multiple solutions, not just a one-size-fits-all approach. On home buyer affordability, now these are folks trying to get into buying a home. What we really have seen is just an astronomical, there's no better word, increase in the unaffordability of home buying. So the chart on the left is showing you what the median priced home, the mortgage payment would be monthly on the median priced home. If you look back in the peak of the housing boom, when housing was many multiples of income, you can see that payment was about $2,500. Now we're approaching $3,500. What's happened is we have not just high housing prices, but interest rates that are now 7% or more. And the combination of those two has made housing more unaffordable for entry-level home buyers than at any point in the last 5 or 6 decades. If you look on the right-hand side, that's showing you metro areas across the country and how much income you need to be able to qualify for a median price house. And you can look at the orange and the red and the yellow, and places across the country where you need more than $100,000 a year to be an entry-level home ownership has really come quite widespread. Now, one thing about this too is if we think about it in terms of just getting the mortgage payment you need, it's also the down payment. So for that, I like to think about the price to income ratio. So this chart is showing you the distributions of markets across the country in the price to income ratio, with blue being ratios under 3, and then the brown is 3 to 4, yellow 4 to 5, and so on. The line showing you what happened across the country. The key here is we go back to the 1990s, there was a rule of thumb. House prices would be 3 times income. And that held for much of the 90s. During the housing bubble, it got up to about 5. And you can see here, whereas before about 2/3, 3/4 of markets had a price to income ratio of 3, it became only about 1/3 at the peak of the bubble. Things got a little better as we recovered from the Great Recession and the housing crash. But look where we are today. That ratio is back above 5, and there's only one market in the country where that price to income ratio is less than 3. That's Syracuse, New York. I don't think that's even true of Syracuse today. So what we're seeing now is, again, this issue of housing affordability is no longer just a coastal issue. It's across the country. And at price to income ratios of 4 or 5, the amount of time you need to get to a down payment takes longer and longer. So this is saying that we need not just down payment, but not just assistance in affording the mortgage, but also down payment assistance. And just to put some numbers on this, this is showing you for the country the median priced house, and it's showing you working down to what income you need. Look, if you look at the bottom line, from 2021 to today, we've gone from needing $70,000 to $124,000. If you look at the middle line, we've gone from needing $20,000 in down payment to $26,000 in down payment. So the home buyer affordability issue, I think this is a fundamental challenge for us as a country. If the pathway to the American dream becomes that closed off, we're in trouble. And we need to lean into down payment assistance because coming up with that amount of cash is really challenging. But we also need to think about nowadays, how do we bring down interest rates? And interest rate subsidies are another tool I think we need to dust off. All right, that's people getting into home ownership, but what about existing homeowners? So this is a chart similar to what I showed you for renters, the number and share of homeowners who are cost burdened, spending more than 30 or 50% of their income on housing costs. You can see that during the peak of the housing bubble back in the early 2000s, that number was well above 20 million. In fact, there were more homeowners who were cost burdened than renters. But over the next decade, the situation improved, partly because the worst off homeowners lost their home to foreclosure, partly because interest rates came down, and partly because first-time home buyers were few and far between. But look where we are today. We can see that since 2019, that story, which had been improving year over year, has now gotten worse, and we're seeing homeowners having their cost burdens rise as well. Now, if we look at this story by income, it's different than the renter story. On the rental side, it's middle and moderate income renters who are seeing the worsening most. On the homeowner side, it's actually the lowest income households. So here, if you look on the left-hand side, homeowners making less than $15,000 are the ones who are bearing the brunt of this. And it's $15,000 or $30,000 a year, I should say. And so what's happening there? In a time when we've had interest rates coming down, it's largely property taxes and insurance. And for these low-income households, many of them may actually have had their mortgage paid off. There are a lot of older homeowners in this category. And so as we think about stabilizing home ownership, we can think about tools that affect property taxes and insurance for older households are really starting to feel the squeeze. All right, let me turn to stepping back and talk about long-term drivers of affordability. I think we often get in a situation where we focus on what's happening today and look at that and interpret what's happening in the market based on current conditions, but stepping back and taking a longer view, I think, provides some new insights. So, we talk today about the fact that rental affordability is at a crisis, but I want to remind us that this is not a crisis that just emerged over the last few years. It's a problem that's been growing for the last half century. So this chart is showing you the share of renters who are cost burdened going back to 1960. In 1960, it was about a quarter of renters were cost burdened. And if you look decade by decade, the problem has gotten worse. It increased a lot in the 70s and the 80s. The 90s wasn't a bad decade because of the fact that we built a lot of housing. The first part of this century was the worst decade we've had in terms of how much more the problem grew. And since then, it hasn't grown a lot, aside from the last few years, but it hasn't gotten better. The key thing here is we have decades where it gets worse, but we don't have decades where it gets better. What's going on? What is it that's driving this problem, not just from the lack of supply the last few years, but the trends over the last 50 years? The key here is that housing affordability is a function of income and housing costs. It's simple math. And here we're going back to look at 1960, how much has median rent grown in real terms, adjusting for inflation, versus how much income of renters has gone up. Since 1960, rents are up 73% higher than inflation. Incomes are up only 14%. So there's this enormous divide between housing costs and incomes. So I get asked the question, well, is this a housing cost problem or an income problem? And the answer is yes, it's both. But as a houser, I'm really focused on the housing side of the equation. So all the work you do in economic development and getting good jobs for your residents of your cities is critically important. But we've got to think about what it is we can do to bend that housing cost curve. And this isn't a new problem. Now, if I had more time, I've got a whole bunch more slides I can entertain you with. But let me just cut to the chase. So the key takeaway is this is not a new problem. It's been growing for a long time. Why is that? Well, the first is that when we look at why housing costs have gotten so high, it's because new homes are bigger and higher quality than they were in 1960 and 1970. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in the sense that we're saying that homes are safer, they're more energy efficient, they're providing more space for households. But it's also the case we're not providing enough opportunity for building simple, small homes as well. The other is that housing fundamentally is a bundle of the structure and land. And the thing that really inflates is land costs. And since we're not making any more land, that fact that land is scarce, it keeps getting bid up over time, and it always grows faster than inflation. So land is a fundamental issue. And then lastly, housing construction has not realized the productivity gains that other sectors have. And so we're still building homes largely as we did. So what this implies about solutions is that we have to encourage the production of smaller, simpler homes. How do we make it possible for developers to build small single-family homes, townhomes, and small apartments? We have to make more efficient use of land. This is where the zoning story comes in. If we're not making more land, we've got to put more housing on the land that we have. But I think it's also really important for cities to realize that land is a fundamental driver of housing costs, and if you have public land, do not give it up. If you're going to have a use for housing or other purposes, retain ownership for the long term. Because I can tell you one thing, if I came back and gave this talk 50 years from now, it's going to be how much more expensive land is today than it was then. And if in your city that's been revitalizing, count on your own success. Lock in that value now, because if you are successful, that's going to be a big driver of housing costs. And then lastly, we really need to support the adoption of methods to improve construction efficiency. A simple way to do that is to welcome manufactured housing into your communities. It's one of the best efficient forms of housing. But how do we support modular? How do we support panelized? Building codes matter for this. Other regulatory constraints, ways to incentivize those industries that take root in your communities. Let me talk briefly about the housing supply story. So no shock to this room, of course. We're underbuilding housing. And let me show you how we think about it. This is a line showing you, the green line is how many new housing units we build every year, and the dark line is how many new households we've had every year. And you can see here is that that green line is always above the dark line. Why is that? Because we need to not just build housing for new households, we've got to build housing to replace the housing that's dilapidated and needs to be replaced. We build housing for second homes. We build housing because we need a bigger vacant stock. What's astounding, just this very simple view, is if you look in the last 10 years, those lines were coincident for a long time. We've never had a period where we're building just as much housing as we were adding households. Now, we did come with an overhang of housing from the early part of this decade, of the century, but we had worked that off by about 2016, 17. Well, the other thing I want you to take a look at here is we talk about a lack of supply. There's also been a real surge in demand. And so we talk about the fact we're not building enough, but we also have to take a look at the demand side of the equation, because that has been a big driver. And I'll close with a bit of a demographic outlook. That might be some good news in terms of reducing the pressure on the stock. A couple of key things, though, about the supply. This chart is showing you the single-family production over time and the multifamily production over time. And the lines through there are the long-term average in those types of housing. What's really interesting is we think about the fact that we haven't been building enough housing, higher density housing. The biggest shortfall has been single-family housing. We typically build about 1 million single-family homes a year, have for a long time. We didn't build 1 million single-family homes up until right around the pandemic. Multifamily housing, which we build about 350,000 a year, has actually been running above that level. Now, mind you, we had millennial generation coming of age. We had a back to the city movement. We had a multifamily stock that was old and needed to be replaced. But really, I think one thing that's underappreciated is we need to have more single-family housing of various types to support people who want to have entry-level home ownership. Here's another way to look at this. So this chart is showing you the supply of just single-family housing, and the stacked bars are entry-level home ownership. The orange is 1,400 square foot homes or less. The green is manufactured housing. The yellow are townhomes, and the blue are condos. The line is showing you the share of all single-family production in small homes. Back in 2000, they were about half of the housing production. They're now down to about 42%. We're not building small single-family homes. And I think we need to look at our zoning and building codes and say, are we making it hard to build those homes? But we're also not placing nearly as much manufactured housing. Townhomes are an important part of that supply, and the condo market is the one that's been most moribund. It's only about 5% of multifamily starts. It used to be 40%. So thinking about what are the regulatory structures that may be inhibiting these types of small entry-level home ownership are going to be really important. And let me take a look, as I close out here, with the demographic outlook. So one of the things the Joint Center is known for is doing a household forecast, taking a look out the next 10, 20 years, how many new households are we going to have? Just a couple weeks ago, we released our latest update. So the blue bars are showing you here what the average household growth had been by decade going back to the 1990s, and these are in millions. So in the 1990s, we added 1.4 million households. In the first part of this decade, of this century, 1.1 million. Over the last 10 years, 1 million households. So with that, you think about 20%, 30% more housing units to accommodate that growth in households. We need 1.3, 1.4 million housing units a year. We've been running short of that lately. But look where we're going. In the next decade, we expect household growth is going to be 900,000 a year. Why is it declining? In this forecast, it's declining mostly because of the aging of the baby boom generation. The next generations are pretty large, but they're not compensating for the dying off, essentially, of the baby boom generation. And these numbers assume net international immigration of 8 to 900,000 a year. If that number falls, then we're going to see lower numbers than that. And suddenly building 1 million housing units a year as a country is going to be sufficient. So as the demand picture changes, the need for supply is going to change as well. And if you look at the next 10 years, a household formation of only 500,000, we have not had household growth that low in more than a century. So we're looking at a period of time over the next 2 decades where household growth is going to slow dramatically, even if immigration stays at the levels it's been over the last 10 years or 20 years. If it falls, we're going to have even lower household growth. And we're going to have a very different dynamic in the housing market. Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but this is something we really need to keep our eye on. And I think the other piece of this is what's the age structure of that population? So the left-hand side is showing you the 10-year increments and the number of households. The right-hand side is showing you the change. The things that stand out here are, first of all, the oldest households, households over age 75. Look at on the right-hand side, that growth in those bars. And on the left-hand side, we're going to see a growth of households over 75 of 7.5 million over the next 10 years. That's almost all of the new household growth on net will be among older households. Are we prepared to house those households? Are we prepared to house those households with the services they need to live healthy lives? The other piece of this is the growth is going to be in those 35 to 54. So the millennial generation is really going to start, going to add to the growth of those early middle-age households. Again, when I see this, I say we're still going to have strong demand for home ownership. We're going to have strong demand for people who are going to want to have more single-family housing typologies. On the youngest age groups, we're going to see decline. So we're going to see decline in rental demand over the next 20 years. So I think thinking about what we're doing today, but having a longer-term vision is important. Not just what's the problem today, what's the issue going to be in 5 years. So we're sometimes called the Joint Center for Gloom and Doom, but we try to tell it like it is. And so I think these are important issues. I think you're all wrestling with them, but hopefully this will be something that will be informative for you as you go forward. I'm doing a session with Mayor Gunther later this afternoon. We can share what you're working on and learn more about your solutions to housing, because it is the issue. Thank you all. I appreciate you letting me be here.
Please remain seated. Our program will resume shortly.
Good afternoon. Our next session, From Investment to Impact, the role of mayors in supporting women-owned businesses, will explore how strategic investments by mayors in small businesses drive innovation, strengthen local economies, and empower women entrepreneurs. This conversation is presented by the USCM Women Mayors Leadership Alliance. Please welcome Albany Mayor Kathy Sheehan, Chair of the Alliance, and Fontana Mayor Aquanetta Warren, Vice Chair of the Alliance.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to be here to talk about the role that mayors can play in helping and supporting women-owned businesses. We have a bit of a truncated schedule here because there's someone who's supposed to be coming to speak.
Yes.
Anyway.
And it's not me.
But listen, we know that small businesses are the backbone of our communities. They make up 63% of new jobs. They employ nearly half of the people in our cities. And women are starting to start more small businesses. The number of new businesses started by women in 2019 was around 30%. It's nearly 50% in 2023. So we just want to highlight a couple of ways that we've worked to support those women-owned businesses. And one of the businesses in my city that we were able to help was a woman who, she makes handbags, she's a designer, but she's a manufacturer, right? She has machinery and things that she has to use, and when she went to start her business, she got sticker shock when she found out how much the insurance was going to cost because she was a manufacturer. And so we were able to help her out with our American Rescue Plan funding and the small business grants that we gave to help her to offset that cost so that she could get her business started. And it's really listening to those business owners, because sometimes I think we know what they need, but when you really sit down and talk to them, I never would have thought about insurance. And so really working with those small businesses and those women who don't necessarily have the same connections to banks, to attorneys and those resources has been really important, and it's worked really well in the city of Albany. But Mayor Warren, what about what you're doing in Fontana?
We are on overload. We have a theme in Fontana. It's called Fontana's Open for Business. And this young lady that we've been working with is the epitome of what that stands for. She's working out of her garage in her kitchen doing cookies. She does personalized cookies now. But we're leveraging all of our resources toward making sure that people like her are successful. We have a Fontana Empowerment Loan Program, which is not just come and get a grant, not just come get the loan. We provide the resources from AMPAC, which is a group that works directly with businesses to understand their spreadsheets, understand staffing levels, all of the tools that a business needs. And it's so wonderful that in this time space, women are taking charge of probably employing over 30% of the workforce in the United States. So these are exciting times.
Well, another business that we had in Albany that we think is really going to take off and employ a lot of folks is a woman-owned business. They made an insert that you use in diapers that is reusable. And so when the pandemic hit, and everybody needed their protective gear, they realized that the same process that they used to make these diapers, they could use to make gowns. And that, she patented it.
Right.
And is on the road to getting FDA approval. Our local hospital, which is a regional trauma center, projects that they're going to save $3 million a year in supply costs by purchasing these gowns. And she stopped me, literally, I think I was walking down the sidewalk, and she was almost in tears because she was losing her office space. And she said, you know, our landlord is kicking us out. We can't find space. And so we were able to find space for her in an incubator that the city had helped to fund, again with American Rescue Plan funding, an expansion of it. And it was the perfect timing. She has moved into that space, and she'll tell anybody and everybody, Mayor Sheehan saved my business but it was, I didn't save her business, but we were able to work with her and find that space and demystify the whole process for her. And so it has helped her to really focus on her business and move at a much faster pace to launch that business than what she had expected.
Speaking of office space, we're redoing our entire downtown. I call it Uptown. They've already called it the Forge District. As a result of that, we're going to have a lot of office space and a lot of spaces for restaurants and bars and all those things. Yes, I said bars. You need that stuff. So what we're doing is working with this one lady that does these platters where you can get the salami and the cheese and all of those pistachio nuts. I just named off my favorites. And as a result, she came up to my office and met with our great assistants, Wendy, and told her all about her business. And now we're actually going to have them move into one of those spaces. She'll have the opportunity where people during lunchtime can come and get them a little platter and get the little foods on there that they like. You get off work, you don't want to cook for the fam, or you're having a party, and don't even mention parties. She puts apricots and prunes on there. I'm big on that too. Everything you need to facilitate the party. And it's all about presentation. I'm not trying to say the men folk don't know what they're doing, but we females, when we get in the kitchen and we get in the house, people have always just saw that as our role. But now people are making money off of the eats, and it's going far. So we're really excited about her doing that. She'll be one of our first new businesses in our Forge District, moving in soon.
Well, and those places and how they look and how welcoming they are is really important as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure many mayors out there have facade improvement programs. We have a facade improvement program. We'll match a grant of up to $10,000 for improvements that our business owners are making to their facades. And we also have a carve out though for minority and women owned businesses where we give the grant. There's no match that's required on their part. And we've been able to use some of the funding through our community development agency because many of these businesses are located in formerly redline neighborhoods where we have a really strong interest in helping to bring back the commercial districts in those areas with businesses that meet the needs of the neighborhood and of the community. And being able to tell someone, we're going to be able to give you that grant. And again, sometimes it's $5,000, $10,000 that can really make the difference. And so, how were you able to jumpstart that commercial district?
One of the things that we have been doing is marketing to our public that we're coming. This is coming. Look forward to it. One of the biggest obstacles that any business has is marketing what they're selling, getting the word out, come by. So we have a program that I started during COVID because, we're in the suburbs of Los Angeles. I'm about 65 miles east, although go be strong, Los Angeles and Altadena. Come back. Come back. That's my hometown and I'm praying for it. We were able to start a program called Mayor Monday because people would tell me, Mayor, the mayor said we can't go outside. Well, Fontana has 50 parks. And well, what mayor are you listening to? I'm your mayor. Listen to me. Go outside. Take your family. Don't just stay in the house arguing with each other and breaking up. You can have recreational activities. As a result of that show, we are using that to help our businesses advertise what their particular products and services are. The other part is we're finding more women running their husband's business in manufacturing and industrial. And they're coming forward saying, don't forget about us. So we're working with them too.
Absolutely. And we can also make sure that we're patronizing those businesses when we have community events, when we're looking for swag for our swag bags, all great opportunities that mayors have to lift up these small businesses that are bringing vibrancy to our downtowns and are really an important part of our economy. So I look forward to hearing from all of you as we continue in this conference about the other ideas that you've implemented, and let's get out there and really support these women-owned businesses. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please welcome Mayor Andy Ginther.
Good afternoon, friends. It is my high honor to welcome our next speaker, a man whom, without all the success and progress American cities have made over the last 4 years, simply would not be possible. American mayors could ask for no better friend and partner than the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. It's easy now. It's easy now as cities are thriving to forget just how tough a spot we were all in just 4 years ago. It was a real-life nightmare. The most disruptive global event in our lifetimes had decimated our revenues, erased millions of jobs overnight, and taken far too many lives. American mayors had a partner. Working hand in hand, President Biden led the most productive 4 years for American cities in our history. He delivered the American Rescue Plan that brought us back from the brink. He then helped us catapult ahead with the bipartisan infrastructure law. He made history's greatest investment in the fight against climate change in the Inflation Reduction Act. And among many other achievements, he set in motion a great renaissance of American manufacturing with the CHIPS and Science Act. It is a record that will not only stand the test of time, but had profound, tangible benefits for the people we serve and the cities we love. Today, our cities are vibrant and brimming with optimism. And for that, we cannot thank you enough for your devoted leadership. Indeed, thank you is not enough. That's why today I'm proud to announce that we are taking the very rare step of presenting to President Joe Biden the United States Conference of Mayors Award for Distinguished Public Service. This is our highest honor, and there's no more fitting recipient than President Biden. Mr. President, your legacy of achievement and support for the working people of this country will forever be celebrated. On behalf of America's mayors, we honor you and thank you for your service and for your friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Mayor Ginther, thank you very much from Columbus, Ohio, for your leadership of this conference. Please have a seat if you have one. Thank you, Tom Cochran, for your remarkable stewardship of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for decades. I want to give a special thanks to his wife, Clarita, who I just met. She's running around here, feeling after she broke her hip. You good, doing well? Anyway, Tom, you and I have something in common. We both married way above our station. To my hometown mayor, John Carney. John, where are you, out there? Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you, John. This guy's a true public servant. He just finished 8 years as a great governor and then decided to run for mayor. A special thanks to another great friend, the mayor of my second home, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Paige Cognotti. Paige. It's an honor to receive this award. As I measure the significance of the award based on the character and the consequences of the organization bestowing the award. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is an organization of character and consequence. And thanks to all of you for your partnership and the progress we made together these 4 years. I must say, a big reason we got so much done is because all former mayors have served in my administration. Steve Benjamin, Pete Buttigieg, Marcia Fudge, Keisha Lance Bottom, Mitch Landrieu, Tom Vilsack, Marty Walsh, and thanks to Tom Perez, a guy like me who has been my point person for all of this, but he's a county guy. That's tougher, man. I don't know, man. This is one of the last events that I'll be doing as president. And the reason I chose to be here is because of the first thing that I did as president was to speak to this conference. You know, as many of you know, maybe you weren't here then, but many of you know, I started my career as a local councilman. I only ran for the Senate because it was too damn hard being a local councilman. You know, people know where you live. They think you can solve every problem. They think you have more money than you do and more power than you do. You're in the front lines answering key questions of their lives. Is my neighborhood safe? My kid going to have the good fortune to be here in his hometown? Will there be jobs here? So many other questions. It matters. What you do matters, matters, matters. When we first met 4 years ago, the pandemic was raging, and our economy was reeling. 4 years later, our nation and our cities have emerged stronger than we were when we entered the crisis. I come here today for a couple reasons. First, my administration released a report summarizing the impact of our work together to invest in America. It all started with the American Rescue Plan, one of the most significant recovery packages in our history, to get us out of the immediate crisis of the pandemic and save thousands of lives. One of the most important decisions I made was to send money directly to you. Directly to you. I'm a local official. Governors are good guys and women, but when you send it to the state legislators, they divide it up before it gets to you. It goes directly to you when I do it. So you control the outcome. Then we passed the Invest in America Act. That's launching a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernization of infrastructure in our history we passed. New roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American. I know each of you, because there's so many examples of the projects in your community. There's thousands of them. We also made the biggest investment in fighting climate change ever in the history of the world, not just America, because of you. And I think one thing we've all changed together, when I use the word here, climate, I think jobs. I think jobs when I hear climate. We're creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying, clean energy jobs. We've proven you don't have to choose between protecting the environment and growing the economy. You're doing both. We have to keep pushing forward, push forward faster. There's no time to waste. I'm with you and your governors to make the devastating hurricanes and floods and tornadoes and wildfires, like the catastrophic fires and wildfires in California. Together, we push Congress for extra disaster relief funding, to rebuild homes and businesses across the Carolinas, to cover the full cost of replacing the collapsed Key Bridge in Baltimore, and so much more. At the same time, we work with you to upgrade the power grids, plant millions of trees, build resilient communities to withstand extreme weather. Not only build, but to build back better than before. Build back better. We also made the most significant investment in science and innovation. America invented the semiconductor. Now we're bringing those chip factories back home to America where they belong. I've stood with you in Columbus, Syracuse, Phoenix, and many more fields of dreams, where these fabs, these massive new factories the size of several football fields, are being built. And as I speak, they're going to create at least 125,000 good-paying jobs. And the jobs in these fabs are going to pay over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree. You don't have to move from your hometown. You can stay where you are. If I could pause a minute, you know what's going to happen as well? When you build these factories, they're going to have to build more barbershops, beauty salons. I'm not joking. They're going to build grocery stores. They're going to build drugstores. It grows communities in a big way. We will soon be the only economy in the world to have all 5 of the top chip companies operating in America, creating thousands of jobs. And for the first time in decades, these new factories are producing the most advanced chips right here in America. These aren't just fabs, these investments are creating opportunities for entire communities, for small business, creating even more jobs, and so much more. I've kept my commitment to be president for all America, whether you voted for me or not. In fact, studies show my programs have delivered more for red states than blue states. The results are clear. 16.6 million new jobs, the lowest average unemployment rate for 50 years, a record 21 million new applications to start new businesses, and every one of those applications is an act of hope in your communities. Wages are up, inflation is down, and we passed the most significant gun safety law in 30 years. We're slashing overdose deaths by 26% last year you did it, faster than ever, and seizing record amounts of fentanyl, making life-saving Narcan available over the counter. Violent crime is now at a 50-year low. Because of you. The bottom line, you've produced an incredible 4 years. So much we got done together. Will take time to see and feel, though. But the seeds have been planted. Will grow and they'll bloom for decades to come, and not one, none of it could have happened without all of you. That's not hyperbole, none of it. You know, we're not finished yet. Earlier today, I announced 3 major priorities that mark important progress in our country. First, after fighting Big Pharma for decades as a senator and then vice president as president, we finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month for insulin, seniors now pay $35 a month. But that wasn't the only thing that happened when we passed the bill. Starting this month, the total prescription drug cost for seniors is capped at $2,000 no matter how expensive their drugs are. Even expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $14,000, they're not going to have to pay more than $2,000 a year. And finally, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices like the VA has been able to do for veterans all along. These negotiations are being implemented in phases. The first phase, negotiated lower prices for the 10 most expensive drugs for seniors, covering drugs for blood clots and so much more. And just this morning, I announced the next phase, the next 15 drugs subject to negotiations. Drugs that will treat cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and so much more, including Ozempic. Hard to say. But it really is an incredible drug. These reforms just don't save seniors money. They save the American taxpayer $160 billion. The taxpayer over the next decade. Why? That $160 billion in Medicare is saving for negotiating lower drug prices in Big Pharma doesn't have to be paid out by the government. $160 billion. Second, just over 100 years ago, a pioneering group of women proposed the Equal Rights Amendment to enshrine the principles of gender equality in our Constitution. Throughout my career, I've been clear, no one should be discriminated against based on their sex. And in order for the amendment to be ratified, it requires 3/4 of the states to ratify it. That benchmark was passed when Virginia ratified the ERA a few years ago. Today, I affirm the Equal Rights Amendment to have cleared all the necessary hurdles to be added to the U.S. Constitution now. The Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land now. It's the 28th Amendment to the Constitution now. I consulted dozens of constitutional scholars to make sure that it was all within the power to do this. And the fact is, we did. And third, our cities are places for a second chance. Earlier today, I commuted the sentence of nearly 2,500 convicted nonviolent drug offenders. These individuals are serving a disproportionately long and harsh sentence compared to the sentence they would receive had they committed the crime today. After spending too long behind bars, these individuals will soon be reunited with their families and communities. With this action, I make no apology. I've issued more individual pardons and commutations than any president in U.S. history. There is more work to do, but when we allow our justice system to be a place of both accountability and mercy, it strengthens our cities and our nation as well, in my view. Let me close with this. Serving as your president has been the honor of my life. When my term in office is ending, the work continues. Your work continues. My farewell address 2 days ago, I talked how each of us must be guardians of democracy to restore the strength of our institutions of democracy. The presidency, the Congress, the courts, all have minimum requirements under the law to deal with those safeguards. And a free and independent press, and yes, local governments. The strength of our institutions depends on the character of leaders like you. In our time together, I'm forever thankful to have seen the strength, your strength and your character. And we need it now more than ever. The magic of America has been everyone has a fair shot. Everyone is determined to be able to be treated with dignity. No guarantee, just a fair shot. I've always believed America can be defined in one word. I remember being in the Tibetan Plateau with Xi Jinping. I met with him for over 90 hours alone. Traveled 17,000 miles with him. Very significant differences. He looked at me and he said, "Can you define America for me?" And I said in one word, possibilities. We're the only nation in the world. Only nation in the world that's come out of every crisis we've ever gone in stronger than we went in. Only one. Look at the history. We're the only nation in the world that believes when we act together, there's not a damn thing we can't do. Only in America, we believe anything is possible. You just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. Nothing is beyond our capacity when we do it together and act together. God bless you all. Keep working together. We need you, we need you, we need you, we need you. And may God protect our troops. Thank you so very much.
This session is now adjourned. Breakout sessions start at 3:30. Have a great afternoon.